Right, and we are recording again. So now we're going to look at the parry of seconde. And in the same way that, most of these parries are the same hand position as the cuts, just retracted. Seconde is the same hand position as cut number 4. The tip is a lot more extended and the hand is on the outside. But this is a parry used to, this is a parry that you use to cover against a rising cut or even a horizontal cut to sort of your low to mid kind of outside line. The one difference between this and the other parries is seconde is a very extended parry. You can't really do it retracted. It's possible. Often people find it uncomfortable. I don't, but I'm also fairly bendy. But it's still a very weak parry. If something hits this, it's going to collapse. So I need to be extended when I do it. So to form a parry of seconde from a medium guard, all I do is I draw a little swirl with my tip, draw a swirl, extend my hand out, raising it. How high it's raised depends on how high you're parrying, but shoulder height is a good practice. My tip is sort of extended out, drooping it, I don't know, whatever that angle is. So just bang. More forward if it's a guard, more downwards if it's a parry. But again, this is all a bit approximate. So all we do for this is again showing you from the front, draw a little swirl with my tip and extend out. And my entire hand and tip is in line with the outside of my body. This is not necessarily across my body. It is, the tip should probably be about on the center line. It shouldn't be all pointing out. But it's very much on the outside. I'm covering this part of my body. So seconde, back to guard. Seconde, back to guard. Seconde, and 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 back to guard. All right, I might show you that. We'll do it a few more times. I'll show you from the side, just in case there's some nuance that you missed. So, seconde, back to guard. 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 All right. So let's now look at how we throw ripostes from seconde. So if I've come to my parry of seconde and I want to throw a cut, one of the best ones to do is number 3. So I just flick my tip over and come back to number 3. What this does is the act of flicking my tip over will often help displace my opponent's sword as I come in. So when I'm throwing a riposte, I want to do one of 2 things. One is I want to throw a riposte that gets me opposition. So I've punched into my opponent's sword, my opponent's blade with my hilt, or like with sort of the bottom part of my own blade, and I've whipped my tip around to hit them. That's forming opposition. So I'm covered in case they want to do something strange and make a second attack. The other option is to displace their sword. So from seconde, if I flick over to line myself up for cut number 3, my opponent's sword is here. What happens is it gets moved, it gets displaced over, so it's now out there, which gives me time to come in with a quick cut. So let's practice that. So seconde, flicking tip over and cut 3, back to guard. Seconde, flicking our tip over and coming up with cut number 3, back to guard. Seconde, cut 3. 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 Seconde, back to guard. Seconde, cut 3. All right, so let's now look at some of the other options we have for riposte from seconde. And because in the system of John Musgrave-Waite, which is a manual I draw from a bit, but he tends to emphasize different guards than the ones I prefer. So not really my primary influence, I guess. He uses seconde as a guard, and he throws cuts. He throws all sorts of cuts from it. So we should be able to do the exact same thing when we're using the parry. So I parry seconde. Let's say I want to throw a cut. Let's say I want to throw a cut number 1. All I do is rotate my hand around and come back. So I'm just doing this. sort of this kind of Moulinet motion here. But what I'm doing is I'm keeping my shell in front of me. So if my opponent's sword is here, or here, I'm keeping my sword in front of me, and I'm using my shell specifically to act as a barrier, almost like the shell of my sword. The hilt of my sword is a small buckler, basically getting in my opponent's way. So I go seconde, Moulinet to cut one, back to guard. Right. So seconde, cut one, back to guard. 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 Seconde, cut one, and back to guard. So obviously, like I've emphasized a lot of really quick riposte and covered ripostes, but slightly slower riposte with a bit of a pause or that take a little bit of time can be really, really useful as well, because they take into account your opponent's reaction. So if I parry here and my opponent immediately moves down my sword to cover low because they think I'm going to throw a quick number 3, or even from here just thrust, I can react to that by coming over the top and using the fact that they've tried to preemptively parry to hit them somewhere else. That makes sense. Conversely, when you're recovering, when I throw my attack, one of the things I need to do to stay safe is I need to immediately parry or pull my sword to the most to stop the most likely attack. Especially if I've got an opponent who's very, very quick. I might throw a cut and then parry the most likely attack as a way of staying safe. And the parry is almost preemptive. I don't necessarily know where they're going to come, but what I'm doing is I'm hedging my bets. I'm saying, right, well, I'm going to parry like a very quick riposte, and if they go somewhere else, because that will be slower, I'll have time to react. Or to put another way, I'm parrying the riposte that my opponent doesn't. I'm parrying the riposte that I don't have time to react to, in the hopes that I'll be able to react to every other one. But sometimes you can't, and that's why deliberately going slow and letting your opponent preemptively parry can also be a good idea. So it's kind of a game of like, brinkmanship and strategy. Let's look at it again. So I parry to seconde, let's roll over, cut one. Seconde, cut one. Seconde, cut one. Right. And the same idea works with cut number 2. I parry seconde, I come with cut number 2. And same idea, Moulinet until I get up to here, which point becomes a figure 8. And this kind of figure 8 cuts, these are great. Just even for keeping the sword in front of you and keeping your opponent at bay. But let's just have a look at that. So seconde, and Moulinet up, and cut 2. I want to show you from the front. Seconde, cut 2, guard. Right, let's just practice that a bit. Seconde, cut 2, back to guard. Seconde, cut 2, and 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 back to guard. All right, so those are kind of the main ripostes you can do from the parry of seconde. We'll probably do nights where we just look at all the riposte options from one parry, but tonight is not that night. But the good news is you can go home and do it, try it yourself. So I'm gonna just check if there's any questions before we move on. But yeah, I think like I said, that experimentation is really important. So I think one of the ideas that really bothers me about a lot of martial arts is this idea that your martial arts club should be entirely self-contained. It should give you everything you need. You should go, the one instructor will teach you all you need to know, and everything else, you don't need to cross-train, you don't need to do fitness, you don't need to do anything else outside of the martial arts club. I think that's a really toxic idea. It's a way it's not a way you get good martial arts, it's a way you get cults. You really should be drawing information ideas from a wide variety of sources. And one of the things I really want to do with the Old Sword Club is provide a testing ground. So people aren't just, going out, or, just like going out and learning like bits and pieces on the side as well as mainly training with us. But they can also bring those things back and test them out in bouting, or show them, be like, hey, I like this cool thing, and it really adds to my style like this. So like you can't learn everything that you need from one person. Like there's a lot of stuff that I teach that probably isn't going to be relevant to you, or might just be complete rubbish, altogether. And there's also a lot of stuff that I don't know that I can't teach you. So don't rely on me for everything. Certainly, like I do include a bit more fitness stuff in the in-person lessons, but you still do need to do fitness outside of sword training, and that is really important. But also, like, go and cross train. Look at even if it's just like watching other HEMA videos online and getting ideas from that. But get ideas from wherever you can and try and incorporate them, and you'll be a stronger sense for it. So, are there any questions? That looks like a no.